Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Tom Birchy Show, the podcast, the news briefing, the only place you need to be once a week to learn about what's happening in the world through the lens of myself, Tom Birchy. It's lovely to see you. I have just come back from Wales, Pembrokeshire in Wales, where I was playing at a music festival. And this was all over social media about how nobody turned up to see me play, which was absolutely false. Fake news. I went to play at Westival. Westival is a small independent festival in Pembrokeshire, Wales. Beautiful, in the town of Tenby. It was amazing. They contacted me a couple of weeks ago and said, would you like to come and play for us? And I said, yes, absolutely. Of course I would. So I went down there. I played on the Thursday. I played to the queue. It was very fun. And actually, that was very good for me because I hadn't DJ'd since I was in Mexico, where I played such a bad set that everyone left. But when I went to play for the queue, it was sponsored by Red Bull on the back of a nice Land Rover Defender, the old one, and I had a great time. And then on the Saturday, I played at one of the main stages, a drum and bass set, and it was terrific. I had a 10 out of 10 time, and thank you very much to the people at Westival for inviting me down. Now, this is a new little career of mine. I am taking the DJing more seriously. I worked in the music industry for a decade, from when I was 16 until now. I'm 26 years old now. I am old, but I know a thing or two about music, but I was never a DJ. So over the last year, I've worked on it. I've actually managed to get fairly good at it. And now I am getting the bookings rolling in. And Westival was my first ever UK DJ set at a festival, which is amazing. So thank you very much to them for having me down. Right, lots is happening in the world at the moment. The whole universe seems to be imploding as it always does. Where shall we start with? It's, of course, Mr. Keir Starmer and his Ukrainian friends. Well, probably not friends. We heard a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago in the news, that some properties linked to Sir Mr. Keir Starmer were burnt down or attempted to be burnt down by some Ukrainian nationals, and those Ukrainian nationals have been linked to, you know it. I'm not allowed to say it. I think I might get arrested if I say it. But some of those men who are implicated in burning down Mr. Keir Starmer's house are perhaps gentlemen of the night. If you know what I'm saying, gentlemen of the night. That's basically it. So could it be that our Sir Mr. Keir Starmer, fantastic Prime Minister who went to the same law school as me, Leeds Law School at the University of Leeds, could it be that this encounter that led to the arson attacks at properties linked to him and a car, a Toyota RAV4, that was also linked to the Prime Minister, Sir Mr. Keir Starmer, could it potentially be that he does have Ukrainian bedfellows? And why are they trying to burn his stuff? Very confusing. I'm not too sure myself. I really don't know. And as I say, I can't get into that too much. Otherwise, I'll probably get arrested. None of the media has covered this, which tells you that it's probably got a D notice. A D notice is where you do not talk about it in the media. It doesn't matter if you're left, doesn't matter if you're right, you just don't talk about it. I'm not covered by that. Lots of people on the internet are not covered by that. So I'm just going to poke him with a stick, poke, and go, possibly Sir Mr. Keir Starmer, ex-Attorney General of the United Kingdom, and of course, the greatest Prime Minister since Churchill, he may have been doing something with some gentlemen of the night from the Ukraine. Possible. It could have happened. We don't know. I'm just a man sitting in my kitchen talking to a microphone, talking to you, talking to everyone who is watching the second installment of the Tom Birchy Show. Fan-bloody-tastic. We love it. Thank you for joining. Right. Moving swiftly on from that news story before I get a knock at the door and some men in suits come and take me away, let's talk about what's going on in LA, because I was in LA a few months ago and it was just after the wildfires when I arrived, and I was expecting to see chaos and carnage and smouldering ashes, but I actually just saw a lot of homeless drug addicts. That's literally all I saw. I stayed in a house in West Hollywood for a week, and when I left that hill, the Hollywood Hills, all I saw was homeless drug addicts. Loads of them. 10 a penny. Millions of them. So that's interesting. But now we've got a different situation in California. God's not done with them just yet. We've now got riots in the street. And why are there riots in the street? Well, there has been immigration crackdowns in LA. And of course, LA is the bastion of leftism in the United States of America. That's along with San Francisco. I never went there. Don't really want to. I'm not a tech guy. I don't see why I'd be going to San Francisco. I'm not addicted to fentanyl either. So that's the two main things. The main reasons you go to San Francisco, you do fent or you do tech. Maybe both. Anyway, the US is currently in a state of shock after the riots have kicked off, and we see burnt cars, we see vandalized buildings, we see attacks, and we also see news reporters being shot by rubber bullets, which of course is very, very bad. But I just wanted to offer my 2 pence on this, my lens on what's going on in LA right now. I spent some time in Mexico recently, and I love Mexico. I'm a really big fan of Mexico. Love Mexico, love Mexican people, love Mexican food, love the country. It's very beautiful, it's very amazing. I recommend going to Mexico, especially Oaxaca. Oaxaca is my favorite part of Mexico. Oaxaca. 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 Very nice. You should go. Beautiful. Now, what's going on in LA is that there are lots of illegal immigrants, migrants, aliens, not spaceship type of aliens, but aliens, illegal aliens, people that aren't supposed to be in the country, who are in the country, and a lot of them live in LA. And they do a lot of shit jobs that Americans don't want to do. They do things like washing dishes. They do things like working the nights at hospitals. They do things like construction. They will sit outside the front of Home Depot or somewhere like that, and they will wait to do work. And they're very good workers. You know, the stereotype of the lazy Mexican? Absolutely, categorically false. False. No one can accuse the Mexicans accurately of being lazy. That's why they go to the US, they outwork the Americans, charge a lot less money, and then they send that money back home. Remittances. But Mr. Donald Trump has said, I don't want illegal immigrants in the country. And most people, hence why Trump got elected, also agree with that. However, it's become a contentious point on the left of the political aisle, saying that no, there is no such thing as an illegal immigrant, which is a load of fucking bullshit if you ask me. Hey, this isn't some political rant, maybe it is, who knows, but all I've got to say about the situation is, right, Trump has a mandate. A mandate. He won a massive majority in the presidential election, and that's because he campaigned on strong immigration enforcement. And so what does he do? He strongly enforces immigration laws by sending ICE to come and crack down in that cesspit that is LA. Okay, do we agree with him? Personally, I reckon if someone gets voted in to do something very clearly, like say, this is what I'm going to do, and then people vote for them and they win, the person who gets elected should probably do the thing that they said they were going to do. So Trump is doing that thing. Trump is doing the thing. He's cracking down on illegal immigration, which was a big part of why he got elected. But the people of LA are not liking that. They have decided that they were going to riot. And now it's not just people in LA, it's people from all over the US who were obviously called in by these fringe groups. I'm going to call them fringe groups, but they're gaining more and more momentum every day. You know, the whole world's gone mad. But the people who really don't like Donald Trump, the leftists, the liberals. I'm English, right? I shouldn't be saying liberal. Liberal means you're in the centre. You are a liberal. But nowadays, the word liberal's been co-opted to mean leftist. So we'll call them liberals and communists and socialists and these people that in America, right, you're not allowed to be a socialist, you're not allowed to be a communist, it's bad. Or, well, until recently, you were not allowed to be a socialist or a communist. These days, seems like it's getting more and more popular, which anyway. So, we see these scenes of LA on fire. We see these scenes of riots and protesters with masks and armour. And I'm looking at that going, ooh, that doesn't look fun. That doesn't look fun at all. But there is a certain element of this where I'm like, are these people playing fancy dress? Yes, they are. They are playing fancy dress. You see the topless guy holding up the Mexican flag, standing on top of a burning car with a big plume of smoke and fire behind him. It's fancy dress. They're playing fancy dress. These people have lit up because immigration has cracked down on the millions of illegal immigrants in California. They're starting to deport people, which Trump had a mandate to do. Trump was elected to do just that, to literally reduce the amount of illegal immigration into the country. But then all these people are kicking off about it, and then they've called in the National Guard, and you have leftists like the Californian governor, Gavin Newsom. He is going, oh, why have you called in the National Guard? We had everything under control. It was all going great. And then Donald Trump has sent the army in. The army is now here against the American people. The army. Brother, if the American people have fucking got body armor and masks and have started rioting and burning shit and raping and pillaging, whatever they're doing, I think that's a call for a little bit of drastic measure, because it seems like you're not doing anything that's actually helping the situation. Just going to these leftists and going, oh, yes, we are so proud of your right to peacefully protest, and we commend you in standing up for illegal, undocumented, they don't even say the word illegal, they say undocumented migrants, but then you're setting the whole of LA on fire. There's a bit of cognitive dissonance, as usual, going on in that part of the aisle. So Trump sends in the National Guard. For those who don't know, it is not allowed to send the military in to solve problems internally in the country. That's what the National Guard is for. The National Guard is, in effect, the military that is allowed to go and stop people from being naughty. But does nobody see the small parallel between some guys dressing up and going to the Capitol and going, Donald Trump's God! Donald Trump is appointed by Jesus Christ to rule the world. And then they storm the Capitol and bad shit happens and unfortunately someone dies. Bad. But do you not see the parallel between something happening and then people playing fancy dress and then it all kicking off, but because it's the left who are kicking off, it's not, oh, terror, oh, insurrection, oh my God, we need to call in the National Guard. Because calling in the National Guard for the left, oh, no, not allowed. But calling in the National Guard for people wearing bearskin hats and holding up Confederate flags, do it now, send them all to jail for 1,000 years. Just in my take, as an outsider looking in, I think it's a little bit odd that no one's drawing parallels between those two things. Do you get what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm very happy that I went to California when I did, when it was just a little bit on fire, a little bit cloudy. There was soot everywhere. There was smoke in the air. I'm glad there weren't riots. There was a protest, and everyone was stood waving Mexican flags whilst I was driving. I'd just been to Skid Row. I wanted to see Skid Row with my eyes. And to be honest with you, seeing Skid Row was one of the most harrowing, horrendous experiences of my life so far. It was necessary, but it was like glimpsing into hell. I've never seen anything like that in all of my life. Never. In any country. Across all of the world, Skid Row is potentially the most damned, hellish place that I've ever seen. Anyway, as I left Skid Row, we saw a load of people waving Mexican flags, going, oh, blah, 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 blah. Didn't really understand what they were doing, but it was something about Trump and Mexico and whatever. But then you've got to ask, if these people are in the US waving Mexican flags and then chanting about Mexico and Mexicans, why aren't they in Mexico? The answer to that is Mexico's a pretty difficult place to live. If you're born in Mexico, life's tough. Life's tough. The wages aren't very high in Mexico, and unless you want to join a local business syndicate, understand what I'm saying, yeah? Yep. Not greengrocers, but local business syndicate. Unless you're going to join one of them, life is pretty bloody tough. And the Mexican government at the moment is fully in support of the protests that are taking place, the riots that are taking place, the civil disorder that's taking place, because a large percentage of Mexico's income comes from remittance from its citizens working in the US. People will go to the US, work legally or illegally, and then send money back home. And because the wages in the US are so high, that even if they're sitting outside Home Depot and then someone comes and goes, hey, do you want to come help me build a roof? That amount of money is completely next level to what you're going to get being a builder in Mexico. 100% every time. I understand why the Mexican people want to work in the US and send money home. Of course I do. Of course. When I lived in Singapore, there is a massive percentage of the people that live in Singapore who are foreign workers who come to Singapore to reap the massive salaries there and then send them back home to countries like Sri Lanka or the Philippines or even India, places like this that have lower wages, benefit from its citizens going abroad to make money in wealthier countries. Of course, that's no shocking new revelation to anyone. And if I was born in a country like that, I would 100% do the same. Or join a local business or something like that, you know. But I get it. But also, people must understand that tides are changing. It's different now. The world's getting to that point where it realizes that we can't just, in Western countries, take everyone in. And it doesn't matter how sad your story is, because everyone's got a sad story. And I know people coming from terrible countries have sad stories, sadder stories than, oh, my mummy didn't buy me a PlayStation 5 with Grand Theft Auto when I was 15. No, they have terrible stories. But the reason why so many of these people want to come to the West is so they can play the system, they can play the game. You know, we're all playing the game, so why shouldn't they be able to play the same game that we're playing? Well, there's a few answers for that, but why don't we move on to a different topic? Greta Thunberg set sail on a yacht to go and deliver some sandwiches to Palestine. I thought this news story was a joke at first, and I had to research and go, did Greta actually do this? Of course she did it. Greta Thunberg, who, by the way, potentially could be a Rothschild. I think there is a conspiracy theory about that. I don't know if that's true or not. Please don't do anything. I can swim. My heart's in fairly good nick. Don't do anything. But Greta Thunberg potentially is a Rothschild, I heard. I may be complete lies, to be honest with you, so don't quote me on that. But Greta Thunberg set sail with 11 other people on a yacht, a British flagged yacht, and said, we're going to sail to Gaza and we're going to give them food. And the Israelis were like, what the fuck are you doing? We're not okay with that. And they actually said that the amount of aid on this yacht was far less than a single truckload of aid, of which Israel is sending 1,000 trucks a day in to Gaza. Now, I am never going to take a political stance on the Israel-Gaza conflict, but I will talk about Greta Thunberg and 11 of her band of merry fuckwits going, oh, we're going to sail a yacht to Gaza and we're going to save everybody. And that's great. And we'll put it on the internet and people will think we're so good. There's a bit more going on than you going and taking some fucking tea and biscuits on a yacht. Do you not see how ridiculous that looks? You're on a yacht. You're sailing a yacht into Gaza. You're sailing a yacht. A yacht. I consider myself to be a fairly successful businessman. A yacht. She's on a yacht. A yacht. Can I just Could I just slow everyone down here for a second? Because I know we've got quite heated already. It's only been 20 minutes. Greta Thunberg tried to sail a yacht to Palestine. Okay. Fantastic. And now what's happened to her? Do you know what's happened to her? Mossad. Mossad happened to her. And if you know anything about the world, you'll know one group that you probably shouldn't fuck around with is Mossad. Because if they can go into Argentina and extract Nazi war criminals from under the government of Argentina's noses, 40 years after the Holocaust, I think they can stop Greta Thunberg from sailing a fucking yacht to Gaza. So they got intercepted. The Israeli military and Mossad intercepted them and is taking them back to Israel and then is going to deport them. I don't know what anyone thought was going to happen, really. And I've seen some pieces in the media of this is a British flagged vessel. This is a flagrant act of war against the United Kingdom. And to that I say, did the United Kingdom send Greta Thunberg, who is not a British citizen, on a British flagged vessel to go into Gaza with some sandwiches to try and give the Palestinian people some sandwiches and then take selfies? Is that what the British government did? Did Mr. Keir Starmer, alumni of Leeds University, did he call Greta Thunberg and go, hey, Greta, could you do me a solid? Could you round up some ragtag bunch and come on a yacht and go and deliver crumpets to Gaza? Because if he did, maybe I get that logic that it's a flagrant act of war against the United Kingdom, ruler of the seas. But if he didn't, then I think they were just trying to use the fact that, British flagged vessels aren't usually attacked that much, unless you're a Houthi. Are they still going? The Houthis? What's going on with the Houthis? I haven't heard about them for a while. Oh, my God. Okay. There is a little follow-up to this, just in today's news. More than 300 Foreign Office staff who raised concerns about potential UK complicity in Israel's conduct in Gaza were told that if they profoundly disagree with the government policy, they could consider resigning. Now, this is something that actually makes sense to me. Activism in the workplace is dumb. You go to work to do a job. If your opinions are worth that much, you probably should try a career like this, talking on the internet, or get a TV show or something. Sing a song. But don't be working in a job for a paycheck and then tell your boss, actually, I don't agree with the ethos of what we're doing. Well, don't work for them. Don't draw a paycheck from them. Don't get a pension from them. This grinds my gears even more about the civil service, because the civil service is supposed to be neutral and unbiased and just work for the benefit of the country. Shut up about Gaza then. Seriously. If you're working as a civil servant, shh. Shh, 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 shh. Just shush. I don't need to hear opinions from civil servants who work pushing paper around in a government office. I don't care about what your politics is. I don't care about what your opinion is. Just make the country run. The country doesn't run very well, and that's because everyone thinks they're a fucking activist. Why are you an activist? What have you ever achieved in your entire life with your activism? Nothing. You're just annoying. Just annoying normal people with, this is my take. This is my hot take. If you've got so many hot takes, monetize them. Make that your job, and then you can get paid to waffle all the shit you want. Sorry if I'm a bit worked up about this, right? But this is what pissed me off so much a few years ago with all the tech people. You know, when Elon Musk fired everyone at Twitter and was like, yeah, you're all like lunatics. You're all political activists working in tech roles, but you don't do anything, and all you do is complain about X issue, Y issue, Z issue. Ooh. And then he fired 90% of them. And everyone was like, oh, it's gonna fall apart. Everything's gonna fall apart. That Twitter, that's gonna fall apart. And guess what? X is still here. And I would argue X is more relevant than ever after firing 90% of its staff. So, civil service, what warning does that give you? But you won't heed it. They wouldn't heed it because they're so far up their arses, the civil service. They can't even see if it's night or day. Their heads are put inside of their rectums to nose level. So they can smell their own rectums. I love that. Opinions. And they don't do any bloody work. It's just opinions. Activism. And it pisses everybody off. The tax that the British people pay should not go towards funding the political opinions of the civil service. So I agree with the government. Good for Sir Mr. Keir Starmer for saying that if these civil servants have a big umbrage with what the government's policy is, they should get fucked. I agree. Because although I don't necessarily agree with Sir Mr. Keir Starmer on a lot of stuff, the geezer is smart. You know, he is a smart guy. He was the Attorney General of the country, and I disagree with a lot of what he did when he was Attorney General, but he's smart. He is smart. And clearly, he sees the issue, UK involvement with Israel, as something that needs to be done. And I don't care if you disagree with it. I don't care. Nor does Sir Mr. Keir Starmer. No one actually cares. No one cares. You going, I think that Hamas is amazing. I don't care about your shit opinion. I don't care that you love terrorist groups. Actually, I do care about that. I think you're a moron if you say I love Hamas or anything like that. And isn't it a bit convenient that people go, it's all so terrible, and then they kind of forget that Hamas invaded Israel, murdered thousands of people, raped thousands of people, raped them so badly that some women were found with collapsed orifices due to the amount of torment they went through in their final hours on this earth. Crazy how people just forget that. Gloss right over it. Never even consider that maybe it's more nuanced than someone who's busy paying their bills could ever realise. But no, we're in a world of activists where everyone knows everything because we've got a phone. I saw it. I saw a TikTok. TikTok. Outrageous. Out bloody rageous. It's one of those things that I don't think even those listening to this podcast, right? I'm sure if you've made it this far through without blocking the podcast, reporting it or whatever, right? I'm sure you're on somewhat of the same wavelength as I am with the whole, I don't think that most people should share their opinions. To be honest, I think opinions often should be kept internally. And if you do want to share them, then you should find a fantastic way to monetize them. And then no one can shout at you. No one can be like, you're wasting other people's money by giving your opinions. No one can shout at you if you do that. They just have to be like, oh, that's their job. At least they're trying. I might disagree with them, but at least they're trying to make that opinion their job. Now, something else that I have noticed in the UK at the moment when I'm in certain areas is that we, in the last 20 years, have experienced a real phenomenon where in certain towns and cities, I'll walk around and I'll be like, oh, there's a lot of non-British people here. Lot of non-native Brits walking around. And some people will go, that's racist. You can't say that. That's racist. Britain is a diverse country. It has been for centuries. Okay, when I was a boy, we had 5 non-white kids in our school. Most of them were Indians, and there were, I think, one black boy. And I live near Slough. Okay, Slough is a very Asian, predominantly town near Windsor, near Heathrow Airport. But at that little school, it was called Lent Rise Primary School in Burnham. We had 5 non-white children in the school. But I now watch television programs where they go into schools or they might do something with children. And I notice that there's not many white children knocking about. And I'm like, okay, interesting. Maybe this school is from Oldham. Maybe it's from Bradford. Maybe it's from somewhere in London. I don't know. Luton. But I've also looked around at lots of my friends, and lots of my friends are not yet married. I'm 26, okay? So we're not too much of a hurry to get married, but a lot of my friends have not married, and lots of them haven't had children, and the ones that have children are often those who are not pursuing advanced careers, let's say. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean, tends to be my friends who have children, they're not going to be the next MP of their area. That's what I mean by that. However, I look at my friends who are Pakistani background, an Indian background, a Bangladeshi background, and at 26, lots of them have kids. Lots of them have kids. And that's not a bad thing, but I can definitely see, especially in some areas, the demographics have changed dramatically in only the last 10, 15, 20 years. If you compare the demographics of the UK 20 years ago to the demographics of today, it's pretty startling. We are now in England at a third of the population being non-British. A third of the population. That's a lot of people. And Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland are far less diverse. They are predominantly majority white countries, predominantly. But England, unless you're blind, I think we can all see that there are certain places where the demographics are changing rapidly and no one seems to be talking about this and what it may lead to. What might the outcome be of that for this country? Because if we look at the US and we see the tense standoff happening in California, maybe that offers us a terrifying insight into our future. We almost had this recently with the Southport murders. The country nearly erupted into anarchy, and if it wasn't for the very swift, very harsh reaction of the government in locking everyone who said anything naughty on Facebook up with very harsh prison sentences. And I talked about this in the last podcast, right? No one wants race riots, so I understand why the government did that. But at some point, you've just got a pillow over the elephant that stood in the room. But you can still see the fucking elephant. Europe has had a decade, 2 decades of repeated attacks from people who are not from Europe. And as millions upon millions upon millions of refugees, asylum seekers float across the channel in inflatable boats, anyone that argues that this situation isn't going to get worse, well, I don't think they know how to one, read the news, 2, look at how the influx of certain people has led to an influx in violent crime. And don't even get me started on the actual culture that is instilled in the youth of today, where these programs like, okay, Top Boy and all of the gangster glorifying programs, the roadmen programs, I see more and more young people becoming beholden to crime, glorification of it, the glamorization of carrying a knife, to the point where the state is banning fucking butter knives. Britain is a nanny state now because the people in this country no longer follow the social contract. They don't. The youth of second generation migrants, third generation migrants, they don't know the hardship that their parents went through. And so when in the 20th century, when we received the Rwandan genocide fleeing people, refugees fleeing Idi Amin, their parents had a deep sense of gratitude to this country for saving them from genocide. But they don't. The second, third generation offspring don't. Because they don't know hardship. They just know this culture that we have today, where it's, I'm a fucking hard man, I'm going to sell drugs, and I'm going to carry a knife. And people go, yeah, well, most people that commit crime are English. Well, yes. But we don't need more, do we? And this is a nuanced point, right? This is nuanced. Because I understand the plight of those who flee shitholes in the third world and come and seek refuge in this fantastic nation that is ours. But I also go, oh, it looks like some areas, they're not buying into the social contract. They're not upholding British values. They're establishing colonies of where they came from in our country. And of course, the example that everyone gives is Bradford with the RS3. And I'm not sure if I'm legally allowed to do that accent, but I find it funny. You know, RS3, così. I find that really, really funny. And I know most people do too. But when you drive into Bradford, do you know what you see? You see a completely different society to anywhere really in this country. You basically have little Pakistan. And I understand the social, economic reasons that have led to Bradford becoming like this. And that's not to say anything inherently bad about a lot of Pakistanis living in the same place. But when there is the start of Islamist MPs, when there is the beginning of Islamist councillors, and as the demographics of the country change, as over a third of England becomes not natively British, we start to see how our country could potentially crack in the coming decades. It was reported that by 2060 to 2070, white Brits will be a minority in Britain. And people go, oh, no, that's ridiculous. You have no proof of this. This is a right-wing fringe conspiracy theory. But it's just looking at the demographics. It's looking at the numbers. The white British people are not having children at the same rate as second-generation immigrants, first-generation immigrants. They are just not. And there's many reasons why that might be. Maybe it's because the country that we grew up in is very different today. It's very difficult today. And I understand that a lot of people can barely afford to keep themselves going, let alone thinking about how they're going to afford to keep a family going. But it worries me, and it should worry you. If in Singapore there was a sudden influx of white Brits, they would be up in arms, screaming about how it's the return of the British, colonisation to electric boogaloo. And I understand the cultural context of the fact that the British Empire did rule over a third of the world. And isn't it sad how all the good things the British Empire did have been forgotten, and now the narrative of today is that the British Empire was bad, and that we're bad, and that all Westerners are bad because we did bad things. When really, when the British colonised a third of the world, they weren't resource extracting. They weren't. Less than 5% of the GDP of Britain came from its colonies. But what Britain did do is it felt that it had an obligation to provide its colonies with the technological revolutions that had recently been achieved in Britain. Anyway, let's move on from this one. That's just how I'm feeling about the whole situation at the moment. You know, in other news, a friend of mine just bought a property in Leeds. 4-bedroom property, high ceilings, built in 1910. 4 bedrooms for 200 grand. 200 grand, mate. You couldn't buy a flat in London for that. You couldn't buy a shed in London for that. And he bought a 4-bedroom house in Leeds, which is a brilliant, brilliant town, for 200 grand. And I said to him, what are you going to do with it? And he's going to live in it for a bit. He's going to do it up. And then he's going to rent it out. Because a 4-bedroom house for 200 grand is going to get a pretty good ROI, around 6.5, 7% yield. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And I know that there is a problem at the moment in the UK with the cost of housing, the affordability of housing. But I also had a look recently on Rightmove in Middlesbrough. I wouldn't want to live in Middlesbrough. I'm not telling anyone to move to Middlesbrough, okay? But I found some properties there for 40 grand. No, all right ones. All right. Well, I'm not personally moving to Middlesbrough to live in a 40 grand house, but I am saying there are properties there for 40 grand. Why are they so cheap up there? Well, for Leeds, I don't know. I actually can't tell you why property in Leeds is so cheap, because Leeds has a lot of job prospects. You can move to Leeds and you can earn pretty good money. Not as good as London, of course, but if you're living in a 4-bedroom house for 200 grand, you don't need to be earning as much as in London. Middlesbrough, I kind of get why it's 40 grand. There's not too many jobs there. The jobs there are hard, for hard northern men, not fucking soft-handed little pricks like me. They're for hard northern men. But I was just wanting to raise this point to you, because for those of you who are working in good jobs and you're looking at when you're going to enter the property ladder, there are so many deals to be had left in this country. You just got to look a little bit up north. A little bit up north. You can get a lot for your money. You can get a lot of bang for your buck up there. Serious moolah. Serious property for your moolah. Fan-bloody-tastic. Now, I've said in the next year or two, I need to buy my first house because I'm 26 years old now. Right? I have always been scared of buying a property because as soon as you've got a mortgage, you have to work for the bank. You have to work for the bank. And a lot of people get trapped into that. They leave school. They leave university. They go into a job. And then as quick as they can, they buy a house. They save, buy a house. But then you're trapped. You're trapped for 20, 25, 30 years paying a mortgage. And if you stop paying it, the bank will take your house. The bank will take it. And so I've always been very concerned about tying yourself into that level of guarantee for that long. However, I reckon I have to do it in the next couple of years. I have to. And so I'm looking at these 200 grand properties in Leeds, 4 bedrooms. 4 bedrooms. And I'm going, whoa, that'll be all right. That would be all right. So if you are looking for a little property, head up to Leeds, have a gander. There's some good stuff up there. Now, in other news, I am launching a very exciting project. For those who don't know, I worked in the music industry from when I was 16 to when I was now. And I used to run concert tours all around the United Kingdom. If you know Mr. Traumatic, if you don't like drum and bass, shag a slag with AIDS. This MDMA's got me feeling fucking horny. Where's all the dirty girls? Let's get naughty. Could have been 18. She could have been fucking 40. I'd take her to the hotel so we can have an orgy. I'm a dirty bastard. Sit on me and wiggle. Yeah, you know him? So I used to tour him. And he was brilliant. And I loved working with him. It's a fantastic experience. But after my heart attack, I swore myself away from music. I'm not going to do it again. But then we were in Thailand. We did 2 music festivals, very successful. We had artists like Boo, Monroe, Disruptor, Dusky, Vibe Chemistry, all of these people, wonderful, great. And so now I have decided to come back as I'm in the UK and I'm going to do a tour. And this tour is actually going to help me promote my DJ career, fan-bloody-tastic, but it's also just going to be an experiment in a certain format of this that I haven't tried before. I am a TikToker. I'm a social media personality. That is my job. That's where a majority of my income comes from. But I want to combine that with the music stuff and draw on both networks and see what we can deliver. I think this would be a very exciting prospect if it does work out. And you will see this later this week. I imagine by the 15th of June 2025, we will have the shows up and launched so that people can buy tickets, and that will be very exciting when people can buy tickets for them. And we will be coming to a city near you. We're going to do everywhere from Newquay all the way up to Glasgow and everywhere in between. It's a proper UK tour. I'm going to do my best to get to Belfast as well. I've never been to Belfast, but I hear it's absolutely bloody crazy. Would be very exciting to get over there and do a show. Now, guys, one thing I must say is that I have seen a lot in the news about people abusing ketamine. And ketamine is one of the sneakiest substances that I think is out there, and one that I genuinely detest with all my heart. I hate the substance, I hate what it does to people, and I hate how it tricks young people into thinking that it's harmless. When I was 16, I went to a sixth form college in Hereford, and I unfortunately saw ketamine ruin the lives of countless numbers of my friends. People who arrived there with bright eyes and a spark and just an oomph, gumption about them, quickly turned into nitties. And it wasn't just that they were nitties and they were hanging about at free parties. It was that over time, the drug destroyed their bodies, and in particular, their bladders. So at a very best case scenario, they have weak bladders and need to use the toilet a lot. And at the worst case scenario, they unfortunately have long-lasting, life-changing bladder problems. Some have even had their bladders removed. And I know this will be too much information, but ketamine destroys your insides, destroys your bladder. And I've had people tell me how they'd wake up in agonizing pain and they go for a piss and they piss out this jelly-like substance. And that's the lining of their bladder that the ketamine has destroyed. And I just want to put this out there because I have had my problems with things. Of course I have. I am no saint. But you should know that everything has risks. And with something like ketamine, where you don't feel a hangover of sorts, 1 day a week turns into 2 days a week, turns into 3 days a week, turns into them all. And then it's likely that you won't even realize you're addicted to this horrible, nasty substance before it is going to be destroying your body. And look, I assume that most of my audience is my age or older, 26 plus. Some are younger, but we're getting older. We're getting on a bit. We're not kids anymore. We're not. We have to look after ourselves. And I know I've got fat recently. That was my trip to the USA and Panama and Mexico. I was just eating and eating and eating and eating and eating. But we have to look after ourselves. We're getting older. And we need to make sure that we're fighting fit, both mentally and physically. Because life's tough. There's a lot of tough shit that comes your way in this world. And we shouldn't be fucking hoovering up shard to dissociate for a while. And I know this podcast has been up and down and left and right and angry and this and that and that. But that's just what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk to you about how ketamine is sneaky. It's a sneaky substance. And it has made me truly heartbroken to see what it has done to some of my very closest friends. Now, we will finish this up on a more positive note. Let's finish this one up. We'll be a little bit happier. Let's get it going. A little bit of energy. Of course, I am gearing up for the World Cup in the US of A next year. Have you got your tickets yet? Have you organised travel yet? Are you doing all that stuff? Are you going to go? Obviously, we started this podcast talking about the LA riots, rioting, fire, burning. How do we think that the United States of America is going to handle holding the world's biggest sporting competition? And no, not the Super Bowl, the Soccer World Cup of soccer in their country, whilst the population is having a little bit of a tizzy, a little bit of... I think it'll be fine. Personally, I think it'll be fine. However, I do think it would look very fitting for today's world if the US heavily militarized itself in every single location that the football was having. Because when I went to the US, it is nowhere near what you think it is. You think it's just people walking around with guns 24/7. Yes, there's a lot of guns, but you don't actually see like special forces style security everywhere. I think it would be fun if we put that in every single soccer match, football match in the US, just had like SWAT teams, had like heavily armed patrols, everything, machine guns, all of it. So that when England loses to America or something and we start rioting, that we don't like join in with the naughty people who are trying to disrupt the status quo in the US of A. I think we would be scared as Brits if there were a load of Americans holding big guns. Because do you remember where was it? One of those Euros where everyone was throwing chairs around and it was all us versus the Russians. That was it. It was England versus the Russians. I feel like if in America we don't have a good World Cup campaign, we'll riot. People will feel emboldened. People will feel like, oh yeah, we're in America. Well, everyone riots all the time here. Blah, blah, blah. And all it will take is a couple rubber bullets in the side of Terry's head, who biggest spender at the Reform pub, and then we'll be well behaved. I think the Brits are like that. We're quite an orderly people on the whole, but something happens to us with football. Something about football just gets us in this primal state where we're like Celtic barbarians coming to rip the arm off a Roman soldier. I don't know what it is about us, but football does that to the Brits. I'm very excited for the World Cup next year. It is less than 1 year till it kicks off. Less than 1 year now, guys, before the World Cup. I put a bet on the other day on some international friendlies. I lost money. I did a 6-way ACCA. I put a £5 bet on, and I was let down in the first hurdle. First game, Russia versus Nigeria. 1-1 draw. I'm pretty certain that the Russians would not have liked that. I'm pretty certain that the Russians would have probably changed the score in the papers. No, I'm joking, of course. Russia's perfect. Russia's great. Vladimir, leave me alone, please. I really need to stop pissing people off on this podcast. I love Bill Gates. I love Vladimir Putin. I love Zelensky. I love everyone. I love everyone. Tell me who to say I love, and I will say I love them on the Tom Birchy Show. Tell me who you want me to support and pay me in Bitcoin, and I will say whatever you want to my audience. Hey, that's what this is. I hope you know that's what this is. This is me trying to get a government contract to say things to you. And I hope I get one. We're only on episode 2, guys. We are only on episode 2, and I will be doing this once a week, every week, for the rest of time. You're stuck with me now, guys. You're stuck with me. And if you're not subscribing here on the YouTube, if you are not notifications on, the bell icon, if you haven't liked this video, haven't you left me a fantastic comment, then I'll be upset. I'll be sad. Deeply. Because I want to enlighten you. I want to tell you about all of the fantastic, terrible things that are going on inside the world. And there are many fantastic, terrible things going on inside the world. Anyway, this was fun, guys. Another fantastic episode of The Tom Birchy Show. I will see you next week. God bless. Take care.